pension plan in Boston. As you mentioned, I have served on the University of Massachusetts Board of Trustees since 1999. It is a 5-campus university system, and I've also served on its foundation board. I've had the pleasure of being its vice chair for a number of years, chairing the audit committee, also chaired the academic and student affairs. I was vice chair of administration and finance. I've done 3 chancellor searches, 1 president search, and serve on the investment committees for the university and for its foundation. Additionally, in terms of board responsibility, I've been fortunate to serve on I think 6 advisory boards for private equity firms from Palo Alto to Scotland, and I chair a nonprofit in Boston, and also chair a privately held pharmaceutical startup that's looking for a vaccine for malaria. So I feel as if I've had a number of opportunities to serve on boards and to acquaint myself with governance and the various issues. I've been very fortunate, and I have one brother who also attended the University of Florida, and he often calls me and often wants to know exactly where I am, and I've been fortunate to do business in the U.S. and throughout Europe and sometimes in the Middle East. And his comment often is that, that's a long way from Monticello, and and he's not talking about the distance in miles. I think what he's really talking about is the distance mentally between northern Florida and southern France, and that's what in higher ed we refer to as the transformative effect of education. I say FAMU helped equip me to cover that distance, and I'm here because I'd be delighted to work to help make sure that it continues to be there to help others cover that distance.
Very good. One of the things that interested me about your application was the fact that you had served as chairman of the audit committee in the Massachusetts system.
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit about what your role was there and how the Massachusetts system handles their individual universities' audits?
Okay. The UMass system has 5 campuses, 4 undergraduate and graduate and a medical school. The operating budget is about $2.2 billion. There's 50 some odd students and 15,000 employees. So the way that our audit function is set up is we have a university auditor that is the only person other than the president who thus has a direct line to the trustees in the event that he or she deems it necessary to notify us of anything. It's been a very interesting series of years, of course, post Sarbanes-Oxley and a series of changes. And so probably if you go back 10 years ago, you'd see that a typical engagement letter is probably 3 pages. Now an engagement letter from an auditing firm is probably 12 to 15 pages, and it says that they're not really responsible for anything. So what we really spent a lot of time doing is, the nuts and bolts things that you have to do. We've been very focused on those. So the OMB circulars and the filings that relates to our radio stations and athletic programs, and all of those things have tended to go pretty well. We have, had a few instances where we've dealt with misappropriation of funds and the like, but we have a system in place that allows us to deal with those things and that allows us to catch them, and a very clear articulation between the responsibilities of the auditor to the audit committee and such. So it's not that problems don't arise, but for the most part we have a pretty good system for dealing with them. And we also have a very proactive relationship with our auditing firm to make sure that we are abreast of the changes that will be coming.
Chairman Roberts.
Mr. White, it's nice to meet you, and you indeed have such an impressive application and resume. And as my questions before, my fellow committee people know, I'm very interested in your audit committee experience, because it is a difficult position. And I follow your system somewhat because of my interest in one of your leaders who's now leaving you.
Yes.
But what are the requirements for working in the public arena, in the sunshine? How is that different than Florida? And to follow up, so when you answer, are you comfortable working under a sunshine law as we have in Florida, that everything we say is public and recorded, and sometimes when you're making difficult decisions that will negatively affect an individual or a group of individuals' life, it's uncomfortable, at least uncomfortable.
Well, Massachusetts is very much about open meeting laws and public meeting. And so I think I just sort of take that as a fact of life. I think the difficulties arise when there are things that affect people's lives and their personnel related decisions. And so, there we are very careful about speaking about personnel related matters as a violation of federal labor law. So we're very careful as it relates to those, but for the most part, we have dealt with the issues pretty head on. I'm pleased to say we haven't had, I'd say, such an issue that has caused us too much consternation currently. We had an issue of something that happened maybe 15 years ago that caused us consternation as it related to an employee that was continuing to be paid, but fortunately that wasn't a product of the current board. So, in terms of, the comfort of dealing with the open meeting laws, I think for me that's been a fact of life, since 1999. We only invoke executive session to discuss direct personnel related matters that may relate to pending litigation and with tenure, because that falls under the personnel related issues.
Thank you very much. May I ask one more question?
Sure.
Will you have time to travel to Tallahassee for these meetings and commit yourself to do
Yes,
that?
absolutely. And since my mother still lives in Monticello, I think she will also be quite excited about having more reasons to have, well, I say that. You might want to check with her on that.
First of all, I want to say, I didn't ask Ms. Shannon that question because I know she has a child at FAMU and she'll travel. But I probably can appreciate what you're saying more than anybody, being from Bartow, and I know somebody else at this table is originally from Wauchula. We can appreciate the Monticello as she, can't we?
Actually, I hate to admit this, but I was born in Bartow. I only lived there for 2 days.
Well, and we'll give you a tip here. Most everything good came through Bartow one way. Thank you very
Imperial
much.
Polk County.
Yeah, Polk County.
Okay.
At a minimum, Polk County.
Gus.
My name is Stavros, Gus Stavros. I'm a member of the Board of Governors as well as this committee. You have done very well, and you sense a lot of pride in Florida A&M. I need to ask just one question, if I may. You were on the Board of Trustees at the University of Massachusetts. Has everything been rather smooth up there? Have you had any serious problems with the media? Have you had any problems with difficulties like we've had at A&M? And I'm sure you're familiar with it. If you have, what have you personally done? Or if there has none, and if something has come up like at A&M, are you prepared to meet it head on and help solve the problems?
Well, I'd say that we've had a number of opportunities for people to see how we operate in the UMass system since I joined the board in 1999. We had a president of the system, who was a former president of the Senate of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, whose whose brother, I believe on the morning of September 11th, was the FBI's most wanted. That became a rather public battle about whether the president should stay or leave, put us in direct conflict with the then governor, resulted in reporters calling my home all times of the day and night, and not only mine, but the various other members. We've had a pretty loud and vocal issue around whether the University of Massachusetts should have a law school, or not, and if so, where it should be. So, if you were to Google UMass, you would find that there's a frequent amount of press, and I've even been referred to as one of those bobblehead trustees. So I think unfortunately I have had to deal with more publicity than I would like, serving on the trustee and board of trustees at UMass. And of course, people say, well, we'll double your salary. Well, it's zero, so they could triple it and still be the same. But so I'd say that, one, we've certainly had some experience dealing with the press and dealing with difficult issues. Now, my attitude as a businessman is that, bad news isn't the problem. It's no news that'll kill you. So if you have bad news, you have a problem, you should deal with it. It was Jack Welch who said, doing nothing is a comfortable situation. But when you have a problem, you should solve it, and solve it right, solve it wrong. If you solve it wrong, it'll come back and smack you in the face, and you can fix it. If you solve it correctly, you'll move on to the next. Because doing nothing is comfortable, but it's absolutely no way to run a business.
Right?
Mr. White, my name is Frank Martin. I'm a member of the Board of Governors, but not on this committee, but take special interest in being here this morning. Over the past 2 months, in my business, I travel extensively, and I'm in public transportation. And it was interesting that over the last 2 months, in my travels from coast to coast, your name has come up quite a bit, not as relate to this particular activity here today. The pension fund.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. It's all good. No, but I say that because the pension fund that you talked about in Boston, the MBTA, one of the persons who was a former general manager, Mr. Robert Prince, and I are business associates, and your name came up in that regard. Thanks you for the check that you used to send him every month. But also the person that replaced you at the fund, Mike Mulhern, and I also associates, along with the former ambassador of Jamaica, Mr. and Mrs. Cooper. And they all talked about how great you were and how you were doing all these great things. And I said, well, I need to meet this person, But so it's really good to see you here today, and your background is really very, very impressive. What is the one thing that you think that you would bring to the FAMU board, if you were chosen?
Well, I think, because the UMass system has an operating budget of $2.2 billion and it's 5 really distinct systems, and having served there since '99, I think part of it is just sort of the experience of dealing with a large, complex system. And so I think, the UMass experience has helped me in a variety of ways, because when you've got something that large, as you know, you see just about every problem. I mean, every problem, that can possibly come up. And so I think one thing is just sort of the experience of having seen and having dealt with a myriad of problems. I also think that just, as a business person, and having also attended a place like the University of Chicago where, research and excellence in research are standards, I think those are just good perspectives to bring to a place. I also note, there's I think just sort of some sense of stability, I think is very important for FAMU at this time, and I think I'll also bring that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Ava Parker, and I'm a member of the Board of Governors as well as a member of the Nominating Committee. And what I'm interested in is for you to talk to me about the relationship that you have as a member of the Board of Trustees with the Chancellor or the President of the system. And can you tell me how it is that you all manage that, and just kind of describe the relationship in general, then I'll follow up with, and I guess my next question would be, how do you anticipate and see that, if you are selected as a member of the Board of Trustees at FAMU, describe what you anticipate the relationship would be between yourself and Dr. Ammons.
Okay. So I'll also give you in the UMass system. There's also the University of Massachusetts Board of Trustees appointed by the governor. There's also a Board of Higher Education which oversees primarily the state and community college, but they have some responsibility over UMass. I've also been the university representative to the Board of Higher Education that oversees the community colleges and the state colleges. I think that, when you look at sort of board governance in general, I boil down the trustees' primary responsibilities into sort of, two simple categories. One is to hire and or fire, the CEO. And two is to create an environment for the CEO to be successful in. And so I think that as a result, my practice and our practice at UMass has been to allow the president, which oversees the 5 chancellors, a lot of authority and responsibility to do the day-to-day job. We are very focused on creating the appropriate policies and the appropriate checks and balances, but are not involved and try not to be terribly involved in the day-to-day running of the university, because we think that creates confusion for people. As it would relate to what I would anticipate at Florida A&M, I would anticipate a similar relationship to be supportive of the president as it relates to the objectives that are set out by the board and the policies that are set forth to the board. But the president, in my opinion, has to have both the authority and the responsibility to do his or her job. And then it's our job as the board to evaluate whether he or she is doing their job, and to help create a set of policies and procedures such that they can be effective and be successful in that job. Bless you.
Yes.
I'm Marlon Chase. I'm also a member of the board, but I'm not on the nominating committee. And my question to you is sort of a follow-up in terms of the University of Massachusetts board that you currently serve on. Because if you're appointed to the family board, obviously that's going to take up a lot of time, and I assume the University of Massachusetts board would also take up enough time. And I just want to make sure that you have enough hours in the day to do both of these boards.
Well, actually, my term at UMass is ending in September.
Thank you.
So you can only serve 10 years anyway in UMass, but my term is up in September.
I did have one follow-up, but different question. The Fletcher Asset Management, Inc., what size entity is that? Is that a big corporation or a smaller entity? I can't get a grasp on it.
We're a approximately $400 million hedge fund founded by Alphonse Buddy Fletcher, who 16 years ago, actually a very interesting guy in and of his own right. He's 41 now, endowed his first year at Harvard when he was 28. A few years ago, announced a $50 million gift in honor of the 50th anniversary of the Supreme Court decision. So we're a relatively small firm in the global world of money management, but and we're based in New York. I have an office in New York and an office in Boston.
Any other questions? If not, Mr. White, thank you again for taking the long trip to be with us today. We appreciate the fact that you are very much interested in serving your alma mater, and this has all been very impressive to me about the number of very successful Florida A&M graduates who, when their university had some problems, have come forward and offered their help. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We are actually just a few minutes ahead of schedule here, and we probably are still going to have to take a little bit of extra time until Mr. Dent arrives, even though he's not next up. So let's go ahead and take about a 5-minute break now.
You're watching the Florida Channel, a public service of the Florida Legislature, WFSU-TV, and Florida State University.
You're watching the Florida Channel.
We now have our fourth candidate, Mr. Carl White. I'm sorry, Mr. Tom Jones. Mr. Jones joins us. Comes to us from Houston, Texas. He is a graduate of Florida A&M in accounting. In Texas, he has had first a very successful career as a banker, as well as a very successful career as a partner in a CPA firm which bears his name. Mr. Jones, what we have done in the previous interviews is given each person an opportunity to spend 2 or 3 minutes and tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're interested in becoming a member of the Board of Trustees at A&M. So please say what you feel like saying.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I'm very pleased to be here and appreciate the opportunity to come before the Board of Governors. Very quickly, I was born and raised in Daytona Beach, Florida, about an hour drive from here. Went to school at Florida A&M University after graduating in After graduating in 77, I moved to Houston, and not look back, I actually began my career with Ernst & Ernst, at that time one of the big 8 public accounting firms. I think they're now called the Final 4. After leaving Ernst & Ernst, spent a couple of years in industry, and then with Texas Commerce Bank, which is now Chase Bank. I did 10 years there in management, primarily on the treasury management side, with a few years of trust services mixed in. The ripe old age of 40, I got the entrepreneurial bug and decided to join a part buddy of mine in public practice and formed a McConnell and Jones. At the time we were about, I guess, 6 or 7 of us back in 1996. A few years later, I had the bright idea of merging with two of our other good friends that had a consulting firm. It was Empirical Management Services. And in 1999, our 18 or so folks on the accounting side merged with their 5 or 6 folks on the management consulting side, and we formed McConnell, Jones, Lanier, and Murphy. Today, McConnell, Jones, Lanier, Murphy is the 12th largest accounting and consulting firm in the city of Houston. We have 130 employees. I head up our firm's tax and financial planning group, but along the way of when you're a small CPA firm like we are, you spend a lot of time doing a little bit of everything. So my background includes obviously audit, a lot of audit work, extensive tax, as well as some consulting, and a lot of it in the K through 12 is also in the higher education market. I'm very interested, obviously, in coming back to my alma mater to assist in working with the other members of the Board of Trustees as well as the new administration in helping to just kind of right the ship. I think we're all a bit weary, all of the alums, and I'm sure all of the other stakeholders in the state of Florida are a little weary about all of the bad news that's been coming out about Florida A&M, but obviously there are a lot of good things that have evolved from that university. It has a rich history, and happened to walk in my predecessor, Mr. White, and listen to some of his. And again, as you mentioned in closing, there are a lot of us out here, a lot of grads from Florida A&M that are very eager to come back and assist the university, and I'm one of them.
Well, thank you very much. I did note that you are currently involved at Florida A&M with the foundation. Could you please explain your role there? And do you have any family that's associated with the university in any way?
I am.
A little bit closer.
Okay, I've been on the foundation board for approximately the last 6 years or so. I chair the audit committee of the foundation. I also sit on the investment committee. No immediate family, but I guess my brother-in-law, Colonel Ronald Joe, is executive director, so I guess that qualifies for some of a relationship. But I've enjoyed working on the foundation board, and I'm very proud of what we've done over these past 6 years in growing the foundation to over $100 million in assets.
Okay. Any other questions? Carol?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, again, I'm very impressed with your application and your resume and your successes in your life. Just for the record, obviously, you have the background, but would you talk to me your feeling about an audit committee, working on audit issues, working in the sunshine in our state, and being, as we know, sometimes it's very uncomfortable when we're talking about people we care about an institution we care about, and bringing things to a point that gives us an opportunity for action. How comfortable are you in that situation?
Oh, I'm very comfortable, and I think that it's absolutely critical that there be a high element of transparency in the work that the audit committee does. Obviously, there are instances where information is provided to an audit committee, and there should be that opportunity for information to come in and be reviewed and acted upon. But certainly, I think it's crucial that the audit committee have a direct functional involvement with the internal audit director, assuming there is one. I'm certainly going to push to see that we have one there, someone in that role, but certainly having an audit committee working very directly with the internal auditor, and also with the university president in an open environment where issues can be discussed, analyzed, reports produced, and action taken.
Thank you. And I'll just ask Chairman Edwards, I'm assuming, and I know the drive from where you live, that you're available for the meetings, and I can give you the best route if you need any help, but that you are available to attend the meetings.
Yes, I am. Again, I think I've got several family members here in the Central Florida area, and I'm here often. I'm here several times a year already, so it won't be much of a problem to get here.
Thank you, thank you.
Dave?
Thank you for submitting your application, and I enjoyed reading your background, and I appreciate your commitment to Florida A&M. I want you to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done. I guess you said you currently serve as outside auditor for Houston Community College, North Harris Montgomery College, Austin Community College, and I perform management performance reviews for school districts. I guess my first question is, what was your personal involvement in the outside auditor services for the colleges that you listed in your application?
Okay. I have left the actual auditor area. I don't sign off any audits anymore. My partner, Wayne McConnell, heads up our assurance department, but as I mentioned earlier, I've worked both in an audit capacity as well as on a consulting side. Most recently, I headed up a project where we did a complete treasury management review of the University of Houston's overall cash and treasury management system. That review was done to look at their processes, to come up with ways of improving the way they do things. We made recommendations that, if implemented and have been implemented, will result in savings to the university of over $3 million in a 2 to 3 year period. Several years back, I worked with our consulting department on a performance review of the Duval public school system. Again, it was a best practices review where we looked at practices within the organization, coming up with ways that we can improve the way the actions and the internal processes of the school district would be conducted. And in that particular engagement, I actually headed up our asset and risk management component of that. And again, looking at the actual internal operations of their cash management system. The audits that you mentioned, the outside audit, again, I head up our firm's tax and financial planning group. We obviously work very closely with the assurance department, and my group actually does indeed handle the assurance aspects of small businesses, but the larger audits are actually signed off by my partner. But again, work very closely with them in all aspects of the work that we do, both from the consulting side of our practice as well as the assurance department.
Pardon my ignorance, but as chair of the audit committee of the foundation, what is it? Just the foundation's books that you're auditing? I guess I want to understand what you do.
Oh, the foundation. I am on the board of the foundation.
Okay.
I chair the audit committee for the board, and so we coordinate the activities of our outside independent auditors. As a DSO of the university, we have an independent audit done by an outside accounting firm. I believe the state auditor conducts the audit for the university. Our audit is actually done by an outside firm, and we've had actually not only have we have a external financial audit done every year, but we've had over the last 3 or 4 years several operational audits that have been conducted at the behest of then President Bryant, I believe, as well as the prior university president. So we've been audited. I would venture to say a half a dozen or so times just in the last 2 or 3 years.
And what has been the result of those audits?
We have come out extremely clean. We've got unqualified opinions on the financial audits. We've had no internal control weaknesses that were found. No instances, no management letter comments of any significant nature. So we're very pleased with the results of all of the audits that have been conducted on the foundation.
I just have one more question. Can you talk to me about what you think your responsibility is, or what your relationship is as a member of the Board of Trustees with the actual president, in this case, Dr. Ammons, if you're selected?
I view that relationship certainly. I will be there to assist Dr. Ammons with, again, getting the ship righted at the university. I believe that my background in accounting, my 30 years plus experience in accounting and finance will help in understanding and helping him understand some of the real critical issues that have to be dealt with very quickly, particularly in the internal control environment, accountability environment at the university. One of the things I noted in looking at For example, the report of the auditor, the last audit, I believe was the June 30, 05 audit, there were instances of, it was reported that cash was not being reconciled. Well, I'm an old auditor with 30 years experience. The first thing on a balance sheet of any balance sheet is cash. If that's not right, then I think you can certainly count on there being some other problems along the way. And so I think I want to dig in and help make sure that we roll up our sleeves and dive in, and let's make sure that those basic types of things, basic reconciliations are done, making sure that the subsidiary ledgers tie into the balances that are on the financial statement. We have got to get in there and get those things right and get those processes right so that they can produce reliable financial results.
And I guess I was asking a little, thank you for that answer, 'cause I'm interested in hearing that as well. But I'm interested in in what you see your responsibility is as an oversight and or what kind of relationship do you think you should have as a member of the Board of Trustees with a president?
Well, I think it has to be a very close relationship. I want to be able to have conversations with the president to help him understand again some of the issues and to reinforce some of my ideas and thoughts about the expectations that the board has of his staff. I believe that it's certainly appropriate for a board member to have communication directly with the president. Obviously, making sure that we don't run afoul of the sunshine laws, where more of us are gathering in consultation, but certainly having private conversations where we can exchange ideas and information. And I can provide what I believe would be some valuable insight into from the accounting and financial perspective with the president.
Gus?
I'm Gus Stavros, member of the
Yes,
Board
sir.
of Governors and also on this committee. You've answered the questions I was going to ask, but let me just ask one more, and that is that everyone here favors the University of Florida A&M to be a great university as it should be and as it can be. I'm from St. Petersburg, and I get tired of reading editorials about time for a change, that's enough is enough at A&M. Is there anything else that you would like to add to say that, as a member of the board, what you would do to get everything properly set with the media and with the world about the greatness of A&M and what you want to see done there?
Well, I think if we go back again, if we started kind of not necessarily back to basics, but again, I think it's important for Dr. Ammons to assemble a staff of highly competent, very dedicated professionals that can come in and have a clear understanding of their roles and responsibilities. And then they then assemble their own particular teams, whether it's the chief financial officer or the director of IT, of assembling their team of very competent, again, and dedicated professionals. And I think that's really the key to all of this, in the leadership of Dr. Ammons. And again, and from my standpoint, I believe that I can bring added value with my background and accounting experience to help him achieve the results that we need to have. I think once we start producing reports that, when audited, don't produce 300 or so audit adjustments, but maybe a half a dozen audit adjustments. Once we start doing that, and I think that, again, the stakeholders can see that the university has the people in place to produce the kind of financial results that they can rely on, then I think all that, the press and everything else, will take care of itself.
Thank you.
Gil?
Mr. Jones, my name is Sheila McDevitt, and I just have 2 or 3 questions I'd like to ask. Because you've been involved in the foundation, I would ask you a couple of questions that are a little different from what I've asked others, because I'm assuming, and maybe incorrectly, that you've been closer to be able to see what's been going on here. I mean, the news media keeps us fully apprised, but the thing that I found very disheartening throughout the last 2 or 3 years is the fractious nature of the Board of Trustees itself, and the fact that when decisions are made, then they were made in such a way that you ended up not having a unified front. And I think it's very important when you find an institution that's in the particular state of circumstances that Florida A&M currently is with academic issues and financial issues and so on, that is an extraordinarily important point, to have a governing body that supports the appropriate oversight of the management and its actions after giving it guidance and so on. I wonder if you could comment on that.
Well, I share the frustration there in having watched and read the press reports and having a somewhat of a first-hand knowledge of some of the fractious nature that you pointed to. Obviously, I can't speak to any of the individuals that and what created that environment, but certainly I don't have an agenda, and I think it's very important that all of the Board of Trustees come in with an open mind and an attitude really toward helping the university. And I think if we keep that first and foremost in our minds along the way, and that we can certainly disagree on methods, from time to time, but philosophically we ought to be in the same boat, and that is we're there for the university. And at times, again, we're going to disagree perhaps on the methods about how we get there and different aspects of the university, but certainly if we keep that first and foremost in our minds, then I think we'll be okay. But that's the approach that I will take. And I'm very, very comfortable in knowing and being able to stand here and say today that I don't bring any baggage with me. I don't have any agendas that perhaps underlies my motivation at all. I'm simply here to help the university.
So you wouldn't be a member of any clique that may exist?
Not at all.
Along these lines, as a member of the foundation board, do you think that is if you were appointed to the Board of Trustees, would you feel that you would have to give up the other?
I probably would, because I would want to devote my full time and attention to the Board of Trustees. And so I've actually given some thought to that, and I think that would be the first thing that I would do, is to resign from the foundation board and be able to devote my full time and attention to the Board of Trustees.
And you do clearly have the time?
I absolutely have the time, yes, ma'am.
May I follow up on that? I believe at the universities, the trustees have a member on the
They do.
foundation
Actually have two, I believe.
that are appointed by the chairman of the.
That is correct.
And Frank?
My name is Frank Martin, member of the Board of Governors and not on this committee. I think it was Governor Edwards that asked the first question regarding a family member, and your response to that question was?
Colonel Ronald Joe, who is the executive director of the FAMU Foundation, is married to my sister.
Okay. Based on your background, your extensive audit experience, accounting, coming into this particular role, if you're chosen to be a trustee member, and you talked about working very closely with Dr. Ammons in terms of making sure that you can provide the counsel to him in terms of some of the financial aspects. But stepping back from that role, coming into this particular position, if you're selected, what would be the first, thing that you would want to do to make sure that you are being heard as a new trustee?
Well, I think it's incumbent that I take the time to study the financials, quite frankly. I've done some of that already, but obviously I've probably not been privy to all of the information that I would like to review. I think it would be, it's absolutely important that someone with my background and come in and take a very detailed review of the financial aspects, the control aspects, the reporting, the accountability issues that the university has faced, and so that I am familiar with those issues, and I can speak to the people who are close to that or who have direct responsibility for that. I think once they can see that I'm a quick study and I understand the issues, I know what questions to ask. I think that's very important that they see that there's someone on the board that has some very specific knowledge about internal control issues, accounting issues, reporting issues, understands how things flow within an accounting organization, a financial reporting organization. And with that, I believe will bring a higher level of certainly consciousness on their part to perhaps, make sure that they are just a little bit better, a little bit quicker on their toes, making sure that they review things one more time before they bring them to the board. And so I think that's the first thing that I would do.
Lincoln.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Marlon Chase. I'm a member of the board, but not on the nominating committee. And my question to you is essentially, as a member of the Board of Trustees, you oversee both the fiduciary responsibility and the academic programs. And I've heard a lot about the financial side, but FAMU is also faced with a major accreditation issue within the next 6 months. And in what role would you come forward to help with getting the academic side in place so that there is a financial side to even deal with?
Well, I think the same level of oversight and governance absolutely applies to the academic area. And I've not spent all my time in accounting, but certainly from a management standpoint and understanding management issues. And so the same level of detail and thoroughness that I would bring to the table on the financial and accounting side, I would also be working just as hard to ensure that the academic side is achieving the results that they should be, that the students are getting the type of quality education they certainly expect and deserve. And so I will apply the same level of oversight in that area as well.
Mr. Jones, as an accountant, can you help us figure out how we're going to make 5 go into 3? By that I mean we have 5 applicants we've heard from 4 now. The 5th one is on his way. He's still quite not here. But you've had a role at A&M with the foundation. If you were not selected to serve on the trustees, would you continue that role, or could you see yourself expanding that in some fashion to help the president, particularly with the audit problems which are facing him?
Perhaps if asked to do so, but to answer the first question, unless I'm asked to resign, I would certainly love to stay on the foundation board. If not chosen as a board of trustee. But certainly I'm available to Dr. Ammons and the board of trustees in any capacity that I can bring to bear, and certainly would be open to working with them in any way that I can.
Okay, sir, that's a fair answer. I have been advised that Mr. Dent is still 15 minutes from being here. And by the way, for those who might not have been here when we announced this earlier, Mr. Dent's flying in from Columbus. His plane was canceled this morning and he's rescheduled. He is on the ground, he is in transportation, and he is on his way. Does anyone have any further questions for Mr. Jones?
I think you're scaring Mr. Jones to think that you're going to keep questioning for 15 minutes.
If you want to give anybody an opportunity to do so, when you get someone with his background, particularly in the area of accounting with the problems that we're having in the accounting area, I'd love to try to pick your brain to get some answers.
I'd like to just make one comment. I think it is a tribute to FAMU University, the level of interest for this board and all the applicants, not just the ones we interviewed today. I mean, it's just an impressive group. And your background is right on point in many of the areas, and I agree with Chairman Edwards on that.
Okay, Gus?
I just want to thank Jones for what he's done at the foundation. I have served as chair of the foundation at Florida State and also USF. And the foundation board is extremely important. And your background has been tremendous. You're to be commended for what you've done and your success. And thank you for what you've already done for A&M on the foundation board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, because of the importance of this, we certainly want to give Mr. Dent an ample opportunity, so we're going to take another break, which I understand will probably be about 15 minutes, maybe a little less, so until he gets here. Mr. Jones, thank you very much for being with us. We appreciate the fact that you came all the way from Houston to be here, and in fact, what is, I think, interesting, all 5 of the people being interviewed today are from out of state, 4 of which made it here on very short notice, and I think that speaks again to the character of the individuals we're talking with. So thank you very much, sir.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
You're watching the Florida Channel, a public service of the Florida Legislature, WFSU-TV, and Florida State University.
Before we get to the day's headlines, we have a look at the lawmaking.
The week's wrap-up of State Government in Action premieres Fridays at 5:30 p.m. and airs daily at 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. Watch Capital Update, now closed caption in Spanish, on the Florida Channel. Capital Update, el resumen semanal del gobierno estatal en acción, estrena los viernes a las 5:30 p.m. y se repite diariamente a las 7:30 a.m. y 7:30 p.m. Sintonicen a Capital Update, ahora closed caption en español, en the Florida Channel.
That's it for this edition of Capital Update.
For all of us here, thanks for watching.
Gracias por sintonizarnos.
Okay, we had talked earlier about the commitment on behalf of some A&M graduates to be here. Well, our last person to be interviewed today, Mr. Richard Dent, really made a commitment because his plane got canceled, and despite that, he still was here within 20 minutes of when he was supposed to be here. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Richard Dent, who is the Vice President, CFO, and co-leader of Victoria's Secret's Pink. He is a graduate from A&M, having both the BSBA and an MBA there. I have to kind of ask if your board chairman didn't send you down here to see what you could do in helping Ohio State with their problem with the Gators. The chairman of the Limited is a member of the Board of Trustees at Ohio State.
Yes.
Mr. Dent, again, thank you for being here. We're sorry that you had all the problems getting here. What we have done is allowed each individual to spend 2 or 3 minutes telling us a little bit about themselves. Whatever you would like to say, please do so.
Okay. Thank you very much. First, I just want to thank the board for waiting for me. I've gone through extraordinary measures to get here, so it would have been a shame to do all this, and so I appreciate you accommodating me. Very happy to be here. 2 or 3 minutes about myself. So I'm a graduate of Florida A&M, originally from Philadelphia. Graduated with my MBA in 1993 at the age of 23, and in my 17 years or so, or no, I guess it'll be 14 years or so since I've left Florida A&M, I've been very connected to the university in a variety of capacities. I worked at Ford Motor Company for 5 years in their finance development program, and while I was at Ford Motor Company, I headed up Ford's recruiting efforts for Florida A&M. At the time, Ford recruited at only 10 schools for all of their disciplines, purchasing, engineering, everything. Florida A&M, I was integral in making Florida A&M one of those schools. And that relationship culminated in us delivering about $750,000 to the university back in 1997, I believe. Then I worked at Volvo. I became a CFO at Volvo, a controller at the time. At the age of 27, I was the youngest controller for Volvo worldwide in their North American heavy truck division, but I was the youngest controller worldwide. Was there for 3 years and left Volvo and went to Limited Brands, where I am now. Limited Brands is the parent company for Victoria's Secrets, Bath and Body Works, and a collection of other apparel businesses. And I've been there 7 years, and I've been in this current role with Victoria's Secret Pink. And Victoria's Secret Pink right now is the fastest growing retail concept in all of retail, probably in the last 5 years. So it's quite a pleasure to birth a brand and watch it grow. It's literally gone from 200 million to almost 800 million this year. And we're opening freestanding stores. So it's been very exciting. Outside of what I do professionally, I have a strong passion and desire of working with youth, preparing them for college, and also working with members in corporate America. So this opportunity to give back to the university, and I've done a lot of things with the university at an official capacity, is very enticing to me. So that's why I've been very excited about this opportunity.
Well, very good. We have any questions?
Go ahead, Frank.
I'll start.
Frank, you're usually last. We're going to put you first.
Okay. My name is Frank Martin. I'm a member of the Board of Governors. I'm not on this committee, but I'm here today because of my special interest in being part of the process. I travel extensively, so I understand some of the issues that go through in terms of trying to get from place to place. Based upon your background, how do you see your role coming on to the Board of Trustees if you're so selected? And what would be the first, say, 2 or 3 things you would want to do to kind of, put your stake in the ground?
Sure. I think there are 3 things I would focus on. Thank you for that question. I think one, obviously, having read the Board of Governors Task Force on Family Accountability, there's clearly an opportunity for control and process and procedure at Florida A&M. So having been a CFO at 2 Fortune 500 companies and being beholden to Sarbanes-Oxley, which you all are familiar with, I had to certify financial statements. So I come from an environment where if I certify financial statements and aren't correct, people go to jail. So have a high sensitivity to the significance implications of that. So that's my first point. Second point is working in a corporate environment and working in the enterprise. I mentioned in my opening comments that Limited Brands is an enterprise and has 5 or 6 brands. So the corollary I would draw to that is no different than this body has responsibility for 11 universities. So there's a finite pool of resources, and as a member of a brand, I have parochial passion for my brand, but I also have to have a special appreciation for the overall enterprise and be able to help the enterprise understand the prioritization of what it is my parochial needs are relative to other things. So I think that one of the things that I bring and can help the board and be a support to this body is in the rationalization and prioritizing of resources. So helping the group do that. So I'm especially accomplished in how to do that and play both sides. And then third, I think the other thing that I bring is having worked in corporate America, worked in a highly matrixed organization. So when you work in a highly matrixed organization, one of the skills that you work, I often joke with people that the politics and the consensus management that I deal with on a day-to-day basis in a highly matrixed organization rivals that of Washington politics, I'm sure. So I say that in jest, but in all seriousness, what it means is that consensus management, competing priorities, and understanding how to galvanize and get to the best outcome. And that means with the university being a key stakeholder, the administration, this body being a key stakeholder. And so I think I have a long experience in how to be supportive to all the key stakeholders. So those would be the 3 things that I think that I bring to this.
Okay. Thank you.
Gus?
I'm Gus Stavros, member of the Board of Governors and also this committee.
Good morning.
You have a very, very wonderful background. You've done very well. I commend you. Certainly, we need strong people now on the board of A&M. There's a change in presidency. There have been some problems. I'm sure you know about them.
Yes.
It's a great university. It can be a greater university. As a member of the board and as a new member of the Board of Trustees, if you're selected, if you see a conflict of interest, as a CFO in the past, if you see something which is cost expensive, which is unnecessary, would you be willing to call it as it is, even though it may be somebody who has been there a long time and maybe is in a good old boys series as far as being involved there? Would you call it as it is? Would you be strong enough to do that?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that you have as a CFO is you have this notion of fiduciary responsibility. So as a board member,